reporting. Joining us live now for reaction to the president's remarks is Professor Dave Dulio, Distinguished Professor of the Political Science Department and Director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University. Thanks for joining us this afternoon on WWJ. Appreciate it.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
So the president addressing the nation tonight, somewhat of a rare address. We don't get many of these from the White House, from President Joe Biden. What are your overall thoughts?
Well, I think that's the first point, is this was one of few press conferences that are shared live in prime time by this White House. I think it is hard to say anything other than it was pretty hastily put together and a clear attempt to try and counter much of the fallout from this special counsel report. I think it's going to be in the next week or so that we'll see if the White House was successful in meeting its goal of trying to tamp down some of those statements that the special counsel made.
I think when you think of special statements and addressing the nation in prime time, you normally think of, okay, the United States is going to engage in a conflict, or we had some sort of strike on a foreign country or some terrorists or whatnot, but using it to address some of the questioning that came about handling of classified documents from earlier in the day. Did that surprise you, the nature of how this press conference was put together?
I'll be honest with you, I hadn't thought about that, but I think it's a really good point, because as you note, these primetime addresses are usually saved for major announcements, whether it's in foreign policy, as you've mentioned, with potentially a strike on some foreign country, or a big domestic issue that has popped up. This one was much more political, right? I mean, yes, it was to sort of gloat, or try to gloat, about the fact that the special counsel determined that no charges would be brought, but I think everybody's going to focus on the questions about the president's memory, and boy, that's going to just dog him until Election Day.
So that's somewhat of a vulnerability in the sense that you open yourself up to questioning from the press, which means they're able to ask questions that are beyond the scope of what the speech was intended to be. So though the focus may have been on the documents, his memory and mental state came into question. Also, Israel and Gaza came into question as well. So the press seemed to be able to ask a pretty big variety of different questions. Do you think that a late-night address could actually backfire on him after tonight?
Well, I think there's no question that it could, and I think, unfortunately for the White House, the president just sort of fanned the flames when he referred to the president of Egypt as the president of Mexico. So this just sort of fits a pattern of mixing up foreign leaders that he has done he's done it a couple times in the last couple of weeks. And I think that it's just going to be more evidence for those who want to try to come after him as maybe being past his prime.
Joining us here is someone that studies political science, Professor Dave Dulio, Distinguished Professor of the Political Science Department and Director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University. And towards the end, he was actually going to leave and then came back to answer questions about Israel and Gaza, which has a local relevance to us here in Detroit. There were some members of the Biden administration that were joined with leaders in Dearborn to discuss the ongoing conflict in Gaza between Israel and Gaza. So with his answering of the question here tonight, does it give the appearance that maybe the meeting here today led him to change his mind, or maybe position of the United States between Israel and Gaza?
You know, I don't think it would be one meeting that would shift any president's position on an issue like this. It might be that his position is evolving, and that his opinion about what should or should not happen in that conflict, it could be changing. He did make a little bit of news tonight when he said that the retaliation in Gaza was, quote, over the top. I think that's something to keep an eye on in the next days and weeks, to see if maybe that is another signal that the White House might try to have an impact on policy of the Israeli government that, is different than they've tried to push before.
And it could indicate, of course, they're seeing documents that we don't see to the public. They see it much earlier than we do. We understand there's, of course, a lot of investigation going on of what's happening between the conflict there. So maybe that indicates there's some more news where there may be further investigations warranted into how this war has progressed. And maybe some of the information we had before solely from Israel could have been misinformation. Is that possible?
Anything's possible, right? And I think you make a really good point that a lot more folks should remember about a lot of this stuff is that we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg when it comes to information and data, and the folks that are making decisions. They've got a lot more. They've got up-to-date information. They've got depth of information that we just don't have. And I think that it's probably fair and appropriate to give them the benefit of the doubt when those kinds of questions arise.
Sure. Following the president's remarks here tonight, Professor Dave Dulio, Distinguished Professor of the Political Science Department and Director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University. It was a quick press conference, an announcement from, well, it seemed like the press conference was put together within 25, 30 minutes from when it was announced. And here you are 30 minutes after reacting to it with us tonight on WWJ. We appreciate your time, sir.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
That is Professor Dave Dulio. If you want to hear that full interview with him, just download the Odyssey app and rewind back to about 8:32, and you can hear that full interview. Coming up in about 2 minutes, young Michiganders suffering from dating violence. We'll have that story coming up.